This is the dirt from people's shoes.
Help yourself to any gum, Mike.
The Dirty Jobs reunion looked perfect on camera. Mike Rowe cracking jokes, the crew laughing like old times. But something darker was happening behind the scenes. For years, rumors swirled about on-set tensions, creative fights, and a host who might not be as charming as he seemed. When they finally got back together, those old conflicts erupted again. Crew members who once risked their lives for the show were keeping secrets. The man who nearly died from melted contact lenses had more to say. This wasn't just a reunion, it was a reckoning. When people think of Mike Rowe, they think of grit, a guy in dirty boots, sleeves rolled up, laughing his way through the mess of America's hardest jobs. But behind that confident voice and easy smile was a story almost no one knew. His journey from blue-collar TV host to controversial public figure came with melted eyes, death threats, animal bites, fake news, and moments so dark they could have ended it all. It started with fire. During Season 1 of Dirty Jobs, Mike was filming with a blacksmith. The shot called for him to get close to a blast furnace. Too close. Flames erupted and wrapped around his face. His eyebrows were gone in seconds. But that wasn't the worst part. He was wearing contact lenses. The heat was so intense it melted them onto his eyes. The plastic fused to his retinas. For days, he sat there picking melted pieces of lens out of his eyes. A doctor later told him that those same lenses saved his sight. Without them, he would have gone blind. That's how close it was. But the pain didn't stop with fire. Over 8 years of filming, Mike's body collected damage like badges. There was a scar between his thumb and finger from an alligator gar that bit him straight through the skin. A shark tooth stabbed so deep into his leg that it hit bone. It stayed there for 4 years because it never healed right. He cracked 2 ribs, broke a toe, broke a finger, got 12 stitches, and still kept going. Even the safe places weren't safe. On Sesame Street, he made a joke about going through Oscar the Grouch's back door that raised a few eyebrows. It was a kid's show, but he couldn't help his rougher edge from slipping through. The line aired, but it showed that Mike's humor wasn't always G-rated. It was that edge that made him relatable to some and dangerous to others. In February 2014, everything exploded. Walmart released a commercial about American manufacturing. Mike narrated it. That was it. He didn't act in it. He didn't write it. Just a voice. But the backlash came hard and fast. Jobs with Justice, a labor group, sent 5,048 form letters to his office demanding he meet with real Walmart employees. But it wasn't just letters. There were death threats, real ones. He had to hire security. People called him a shill, said he was pushing poverty wages, accused him of betraying the very workers he claimed to support. For Mike, it wasn't about politics. But the world doesn't always care about intent. The blowback nearly destroyed him. Then came the fake death. In 2016, rumors spread online that Mike Rowe had been shot and killed in his own home. It went viral. People believed it. He had to step in and calm the chaos. He quoted Mark Twain, saying the reports of his death had been grossly exaggerated. But the damage was done. The internet had already buried him once. Meanwhile, Craig Pelagian didn't come from the world of ghosts or the supernatural, but somehow he became the man behind the camera when millions of people believed they were watching real spirits move through haunted halls. He started as a producer on Survivor, learning how to shape drama out of raw footage. But what he built after that turned him into one of the most powerful names in reality TV. In 1997, he founded Pilgrim Media Group. Over time, his company created more than 650 episodes of shows that pulled viewers in every week. Dirty Jobs, American Chopper, Wicked Tuna, and especially Ghost Hunters, the show that made people believe the dead were still speaking. By 2015, Lionsgate Entertainment stepped in and bought over half of his company. That deal alone was worth more than $200 million. He was no longer just a producer, he was a kingpin. But the road that led to that deal nearly destroyed him. From 2006 to 2014, Craig was trapped in a legal war that refused to end. It began when a parapsychologist named Larry Montz and a publicist named Dana Smoller claimed that Ghost Hunters wasn't Pelagian's idea. They said he stole it. They said they had shared the concept, and it was taken without credit. And they didn't just file a complaint. They fought all the way to the Supreme Court. For 8 years, it pulled in executives, networks, lawyers, and even NBCU cable chairman Bonnie Hammer, who was forced to sit under oath and answer the question, was she a paranormal investigator? The case turned bizarre. Millions were spent on legal fees. Craig fought back, hard, and finally, in 2011, the Supreme Court refused to hear it. That meant the fight was over. He had won. But it had taken 8 years of his life and left scars that no one could see. What made it even harder to talk about was what went on behind the camera. On Ghost Hunters, the audience heard voices whispering, "Get out," or saw investigators frozen in fear. But crew members later revealed that those disembodied voices were often just property managers shouting at homeless people off-screen. The show didn't just overlook it, it used it. The voices were edited in, the fear was manufactured. But it worked. Viewers believed what they saw. And Craig didn't stop there. This method of tweaking reality until it felt real became his trademark. Over time, that formula made his empire grow, and his shows made hundreds of millions. He became one of the top 10 reality producers in Hollywood. But even as his empire expanded, cracks were starting to show. By 2024, Lionsgate admitted that the unscripted TV world was changing fast. They called it a continuing market correction, which meant that audiences were turning away from reality TV or demanding something different. Craig's method, building tension out of shadows, out of nothing, was losing its hold. The same shows that had made his name were no longer delivering the same numbers, and the company he had grown from the ground up was beginning to feel it. What started as a $200 million dream was now shifting under his feet. He wasn't the host, but every dangerous thing Mike Rowe ever did on Dirty Jobs usually started with one man, Dave Barski. He wasn't just a field producer, he was the one who picked the places, chose the jobs, set up the madness, and then shoved Rowe right into it. Between 2005 and 2012, Dave didn't just film America's dirtiest and most dangerous jobs. He made them happen. While other producers looked for stories, he looked for trouble. And Mike Rowe called him exactly what he was, his wrangler, the guy who dragged him into chaos and somehow convinced the camera crew to follow. By the time Dave Barski turned 50 in July 2020, his body may have aged, but his obsession with dirty jobs had never cooled down. Mike Rowe even said it out loud. No one, not even him, cared more about the show than Dave. No one sacrificed more to keep it running. It wasn't just a job for Barski. It was a wild, messy passion that took over his life and pulled everyone around him into the fire. There was no better example of that than the chest wax. Dave convinced Mike to go through one of the most painful moments ever aired on the show. And it wasn't just on Mike. Dave had the hair ripped from his own chest on camera. Mike, laughing through the screams, kept saying, "This was mine," and "I'm enjoying this one a lot," while Dave screamed in pain. That clip didn't just stay in the episode. Discovery Channel made it standalone content. Barski gave up his chest, his skin, and his dignity for a few minutes of unforgettable television. And he didn't care. Ratings were everything. But that was nothing compared to what he did behind the scenes. Dave was the guy who thought salt mines filled with live explosives were a good idea for filming. He walked the crew into them without hesitation. He said it himself. "We're in a salt mine. There are explosives around. We have people and equipment to protect." It sounded reassuring. It wasn't. Most of the time, there were no plans, no safety scouts, no real prep. Dave believed in jumping first and worrying later. Mike Rowe and the crew often had no idea what they were walking into. Sometimes that meant bruises. Sometimes it meant burns. The danger wasn't just theoretical. A cameraman was mauled by a monkey in South Africa. Mike Rowe got hit so badly by heat in Season 1 that the blast fused his contact lenses to his eyes. And every time it happened, Barski just kept pushing, because every disaster was good TV. Every mistake, every scream, every scar was proof that the job was real, and that Dirty Jobs wasn't just a title. Away from the set, Dave had another life. He was deep into geocaching under the name Detwunky. He lived for treasure hunts, caves, strange holes in the ground, and weird corners of the earth. And he dragged Mike Rowe into that too. One minute, they were filming in sludge. The next minute, Dave had Mike crawling into a cave, chasing some digital clue that only made sense to him. He didn't separate work from life. For Dave, everything was one big adventure. When the show came back for a reunion in 2020, Dave had one wish for his 50th birthday. He didn't want gifts. He didn't want a party. He just wanted fans to watch the special. That was it. Just one more chance to relive the madness. Mike Rowe called him our favorite freaky little hobbit, and joked that the word Barski had become code for damn it and ouch. Because every time something went wrong on set, every time someone got hurt or something blew up, you could almost guarantee that Dave Barski had something to do with it. Doug Glover wasn't just a cameraman. He was the kind of person who'd follow Mike Rowe into a sewer with $100,000 worth of gear and not blink. From 2005 to 2011, he filmed every disgusting moment of Dirty Jobs, crawling through waste, blood, heat, and danger just to get the perfect shot. But Doug didn't care about perfect for the sake of TV. He cared about it because something inside him couldn't let go. He was never satisfied. Not once, not ever. Mike Rowe even said, in 5 years of working with him, he never saw Doug happy with the lighting. Not a single scene. That wasn't normal. That was obsession. And it wasn't just about pointing the camera. Doug treated every disgusting barn or moldy crawl space like it was a Hollywood film set. He would rearrange lights over and over. He would destroy expensive equipment without a second thought. He wanted shadows to fall a certain way. He needed reflections to behave. During one episode where they filmed turkey artificial insemination, Doug became so fixated on capturing the perfect shot of a turkey's genitals that production almost shut down. He kept testing light temperatures over and over, convinced it wasn't right. The irony was, Dirty Jobs didn't even have an electrical department. But Doug acted like he was running a full studio. He didn't just watch Mike from behind the camera. He followed him into every dangerous space. Doug climbed into small holes, stood next to machines that could crush him, inhaled fumes, and sweated through boiling heat, all while filming. He didn't get hazard pay. He didn't have a stunt double. But he held the camera steady while risking everything. While Mike cracked jokes, Doug carried gear that could break bones if dropped, and he kept rolling through dust, explosions, and blades. Safety teams often told workers to step back. Doug never listened. The other crew members started to talk, not in a cruel way, but with awe. They said Doug would have stayed adjusting lights for 10 more hours if nobody yelled, "Action." They called him a legend. Mike Rowe once wrote a whole blog post called 50 Shades of Doug, just to explain how extreme he was. Everyone on set knew what it meant when Doug disappeared into a corner of the room. He was finding an angle. He was checking a reflection. He was trying to make something dirty look beautiful. And if it took all day, so be it. And sometimes it did. When Dirty Jobs ended in 2011, Doug didn't stop. He followed Mike into another show called Somebody's Gotta Do It. Same camera, same madness, same risks. But by then, Doug had grown into something more. He started taking jobs in war zones and disaster areas. Places where people ran away, Doug walked in with a lens. His obsession wasn't a problem anymore. It was a tool. In places where you needed every detail perfect or else miss the story, Doug was the one you wanted, even if it meant he might not come back. The truth is, Doug Glover was never really a cameraman. He was a perfectionist with a death wish, a man who believed beauty lived in the worst places on Earth. Sewers, slaughterhouses, disaster zones, burning machines. He didn't care. As long as the light was right, as long as the shot said something no words could. He didn't ask for credit. He didn't want to be seen. But without him, Dirty Jobs wouldn't have been what it was. It wouldn't have looked the way it did. It wouldn't have felt so real. Troy Paff was the kind of man who measured his shots like a surgeon, slow and precise. On most shows, that might have been fine. But Dirty Jobs wasn't most shows. And Mike Rowe wasn't standing still. It happened in 2008. They were 50 stories up on a rooftop, filming a dangerous segment. Mike was moving, as usual, ducking, stepping, doing what the scene demanded. The usual cameraman, Doug Glover, would have ducked too. He always did, but Troy didn't. He stayed frozen, locked in his frame, both hands gripping the lens, not flinching as Mike's head came crashing straight into it. The hit was loud. Mike's skull bounced off the camera with such force it could have knocked him out cold. For a second, it wasn't clear if he'd fall. The crew held their breath, but somehow, Mike kept standing, and Troy kept filming. He had seen him coming. He didn't budge. All for the perfect shot. That moment, the head slam, the near fall, the stunned silence, ended up in the final cut. Audiences laughed, but behind the scenes, it was anything but funny. Mike would later say Troy was brilliant. He called him methodical, patient, excellent. He said Troy's shots always looked like paintings. But he also said that perfection almost put him in the hospital. It wasn't the only time Troy's stillness became a danger. It was just the one they caught on tape. But perfection had its rewards. Troy Paff wasn't just some random cameraman. He was the director of photography. And that same meticulous style earned him not one, but 2 Primetime Emmy nominations. One for Dirty Jobs and another for Bizarre Foods with Andrew Zimmern. He'd been doing this for 30 years, always behind the lens, always chasing something cleaner, sharper, more honest. And when the shows wrapped, he didn't stop. He opened his own company, 25 Revolutions LLC. He became an FAA-certified drone pilot, a wilderness first responder, a scuba diver. Always learning, always adding something new to his toolkit. In 2024, he finished a full-length documentary about the Texas Music Revolution Festival. It wasn't just a side project. It premiered at the Waco Independent Film Festival and won awards. His eye never stopped working, even when it nearly cracked a skull. The quiet crew members who followed Mike into the stink, the danger, and the dark. One of them was Chris Jones. Wherever Mike went, Chris was right behind him, holding the mic. He wasn't loud. He didn't need to be. Chris was the lead audio mixer, the one who made sure every voice, the plumber, the miner, the trash sorter, was heard clearly. The stories of hard work, sweat, and risk would have been lost without him. Over time, Chris became more than just a sound guy. He became part of the backbone. He was there in 2020 when the crew came back together for Dirty Jobs, Road Trip, and he stuck around for Somebody's Gotta Do It. Through it all, the bond between him, Mike, and the others never broke. Dan Egeman was one of the guys who carried the camera. From 2008 to 2012, he shot 84 episodes. Dan once said, "This is the greatest job in television." And he meant it. He wasn't standing on the sidelines. He got dirty too. Just like Mike, he climbed, crawled, slipped, and sweated. After Dirty Jobs, Dan kept going. He filmed Yukon Men from 2012 to 2015, moved on to Take Me to Your Mother, and then The American Chorister. Every time the lens turned on, Dan was there, capturing it. Ryan Walsh wasn't far behind. He was the assistant camera operator from 2009 to 2012, with 57 episodes under his belt. In one episode called Crew Unemployment, the cameras turned toward the crew. There was Ryan, working in the kitchen at the Grand Hotel, leaning over a steaming sink, trying to stay useful during a production break. His face said it all. Hard work didn't stop just because the show did. After Dirty Jobs, Ryan's camera kept rolling. He filmed Yukon Men 2 for 25 episodes. He worked on $1 Million Decorators, Returning the Favor, and two of the biggest deep-dive documentaries ever made. Titanic, 20 years later with James Cameron in 2017, and Titanic, 25 years later with James Cameron in 2023. His eye for detail carried through every project. Adam Bradley wasn't holding a camera, he was watching everything. From 2005 to 2011, Adam worked on 63 episodes as field coordinator. A former Marine, he was the one in charge of making sure the crew stayed safe, the shots ran smooth, and the chaos didn't cross into disaster. The jobs were real, the danger wasn't fake, and Adam knew how to handle it. After Dirty Jobs, he rose up in the ranks. He managed high-level productions, directed crews, and even became an Emmy-winning executive producer. He knew how to lead from the ground because he had once stood in the dirt with a clipboard and a headset, making sure no one got hurt. Then there was Greg Brandon. He didn't come from TV. He came from football. Born on February 29, 1956, Greg played at Air Academy High School, then went on to Colorado Mesa and the University of Northern Colorado between 1974 and 1977. He got his degree in education in 1978 and later coached under Urban Meyer at Bowling Green. But in 2008, Greg showed up on Dirty Jobs as a field coordinator, appearing in 31 episodes. His coaching background helped him guide the team, especially when things got risky. But the pull of the field was too strong. In 2011, he left the show to return to football. He became head coach at the Colorado School of Mines from 2015 until he retired after 2021. Then, in 2024, he came back again, this time as head coach for the Cologne Centurions in the European League of Football. He may have left the set, but he never stopped leading. Chris Whiteneck was the one behind the lens. As cinematographer from 2006 to 2010, he captured everything: sewage spills, factory lines, wide-open skies, and claustrophobic crawl spaces. He didn't stage anything. He just made sure the truth looked real. In 2007, he got an Emmy nomination for Outstanding Cinematography for reality programming. It was a quiet kind of fame, but it meant something. After the show ended, he moved on to 100 Days Wild in 2020 and Smoky Mountain Park Rangers in 2021. Wherever there was real life to be shown, Chris was there with a camera. And then there was Billy Bretherton. He wasn't part of the crew. He was one of the characters they filmed, a pest control guy, a former senior airman in the U.S. Air Force. He showed up in Season 1's VexCon episode and again in Season 2's Termite Controller. What people remembered wasn't just the bugs, it was Billy's style. Black leather, silver chains, big jewelry. He looked like a rock star walking into a roach nest. Audiences loved him, so much that Discovery gave him his own show, Billy the Exterminator, which aired on A&E from 2009 to 2016. 7 years. All about his family-run business, VexCon, in Benton, Louisiana. He turned extermination into entertainment. It started with a road trip. Not the kind with a map and a deadline, but the kind built on memories. The old Dirty Jobs crew piled into a mini RV and started driving across America again. They weren't just chasing old landmarks or old jokes. They were chasing what it felt like when they first did the impossible. The reunion wasn't just an episode, it was a chance to go back. Not to repeat what they had done, but to understand how those filthy, difficult, often disgusting days had shaped them. They stopped at old job sites. They met people they hadn't seen in years. They laughed about things that nearly broke them. Mike Rowe called it a look-back special, but it was more than that. It was about what stuck, about how crawling through sewers, shoveling sludge, and getting bitten, burned, bruised, and humbled changed the way they saw the world. He said hitting the open road with the original team felt like the right way to reunite, especially after everything the world had been through. But not everything was easy. For years, fans had guessed that the smiles on screen sometimes hid real tension. When Road Trip was announced, the questions started all over again. Were they still friends? Had time healed anything? Or would old grudges surface the moment the cameras started rolling again? Reports came out saying things had been tense. Some called it unbearable. Others blamed personality clashes and creative disagreements that had never fully gone away. A few said the show had worn them down over the years, and filming again brought back some of the pain too. But nobody really knew what was true, because what you saw on screen was often only half the story. Mike Rowe had always been at the center of it all. He was funny, tough, smart, and sometimes blunt. Viewers loved him, but others, especially on forums and comment threads, started wondering if that charm came with a hidden edge. Some crew members and critics suggested he could be condescending behind the scenes, that the man who celebrated grit and blue-collar pride sometimes rubbed his own people the wrong way. The show had lasted for years, but so had the quiet rumors. Still, Rowe and the others kept insisting that the friendships were real, that any bumps had come from working in the kind of heat, stink, and chaos that would break most people down. The reunion didn't hide from the hard stuff. They showed footage no one had ever seen. Arguments, long days, decisions that almost broke the team apart. There were real fights, real exhaustion, real times when they wanted to quit. But most of the drama people expected never came. What showed up instead was a quiet kind of care. The kind that only forms after crawling through the worst parts of the country with someone at your side. The laughs were real. So was the way they teased each other like siblings who had been through war. They didn't need to fake the connection. It was still there. It had never really left. As Mike put it, even though they stopped filming new episodes in 2012, the show never really ended. People kept watching, the stories kept spreading, and the bond between the original crew stayed alive. It wasn't perfect, but nothing about Dirty Jobs ever was. That was the point. The dirt stayed under their nails. The bruises stayed on their arms. The memories stayed in the cracks of their boots. The reunion wasn't about going back to glory. It was about finally admitting what that show had cost them and what it gave back. And somehow, even after all those years, all those miles, all those rumors, and all those scars, they were still laughing.